Hey, what's going on, everybody? Darby here. Joined today by Chad from AI Content Dojo. Chad's been putting out some really amazing content lately. Firstly on Shortly and now on Jarvis and how to command Jarvis using boss mode, that feature to just really just put more gasoline on the fire and help you write more content faster. But a lot of it comes really down to what you're telling Jarvis and how you're directing it in the first place. So I'm really excited to have Chad on with us today to kind of talk about how he from his experience using the command side of the AI, how we can kind of work with Jarvis and help instruct to build better content, faster content in the context of books. And then obviously you can apply that to other things, blogs and writing other forms of content. But it's Chad, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh man, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. So I know you've been doing some really, really amazing stuff. And we got Dave Rogan Moser in the house, just dropping by and saying hey. But um, yeah, you've been doing some really great content, helping a lot of people kind of wrap their heads around what is boss mode, like how do you command AI in the first place? This is pretty next level stuff. And so it's going to be very new for most people out there that are just kind of coming into the space. So I'd like to kind of open the floor for you to just kind of share a little bit about your experience with the community for people that may not be familiar with you specifically, and like how you got into AI and where your experience kind of lends itself with Jarvis and boss mode right now.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I come from a computer science background, so that's kind of where I got sort of the nerdy part of this. And I'm the type of person who just sort of, I don't know if you saw in the post on the AI Content Dojo Facebook group where I was like, I posted a picture of the cafe and I'm just sitting there just studying neural networks while everybody else is having conversations about
Mm-hmm.
who knows what. That's sort of the nerdy side of things. That stuff interests me, but nothing had really piqued my interest until Shortly came along, or I guess I stumbled upon Shortly, where I realized that okay, it had the right for me button, pretty cool, but there's a lot more power that could be had, and so I worked with Shortly to kind of develop the sort of long form capabilities of GPT-3. I mean, they were there, but nobody had really like taken the time to create the extra capabilities besides just having a right for me button kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so my involvement started there, where I was just kind of helping Kasim develop that product. He really had no marketing or anything like that, so I just sort of by default became the front man for the company, I guess, even though I was never really fully associated with it. As things started kind of growing really fast in this area, I just got more involved. I started the Facebook group. I started talking to people. Started learning. We started kind of sharing our ideas about how to do these different things with AI, and it really kind of boils down to something it's really simple that I think your audience is going to be pretty surprised to hear.
What is the simplicity? How does it boil down to that? Can you go a little bit more deep on that particularly?
Sure. It's actually just kind of one or two words. It's plain language. If you figure out how to ask a human being something, you can figure out how to ask Jarvis something, and that's pretty much how you can work with the AI in the terms of Jarvis and constructing your content as you go.
Love it. So like plain language, would another way of saying plain language mean like explaining it to a child or a fifth grader, as some of the templates are in Jarvis right now? Like simple, just
uh,
not being overly complex, or do you
yeah,
feel people try too hard when they're trying to talk to the AI?
yeah. It is kind of funny, right? Because these programs help get over writer's block, but then you have like command block or something. you can't. You're like, how do I get what I want from them? Um, you don't have to dumb it down that much. You can once there's enough context in place, you can ask some pretty complex questions and be surprised at the what you get back from it.
Cool. Well, we can talk about this all day. Why don't we just kind of dive in and show people specifically how to speak to Jarvis
Hmm.
like this, and like we're talking to Jarvis Underground, like more specifically right now, where we talk about using Jarvis for books, ebooks, nonfiction books, things of that nature. Um, and so a lot of what we find that holds people up is just getting to the point of how do I even like introduce a chapter, or how do I build an outline around a chapter or a book in particular. So love to just kind of like let you take the reins on your end, share your screen and show us how you talk to Jarvis using the boss mode
Yeah,
content.
sure. Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead. I'll drop a little surprise on you.
Okay.
After I figured out I was going to be on your show, I started writing a book. So,
Okay. Oh, there we go. What's
so
your
let's
book
make
about?
this. uh, it's about personas. If you saw that video, you actually shared it, I think.
Hmm.
So it's around the idea of personas as a sort of starting point for blogs and stuff like that.
Yep.
Um, Let me go ahead and let's
Cool.
see, share screen.
I think you should be able to. Let me see, make sure I can get the right. An issue we've had sometimes with StreamYard is if it's zoomed out a little bit too much, it's a little blurry. So when we get things up,
Hmm.
let's make sure we can have the right thing there. Are you able to share your screen?
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go. Oh no.
And yeah, do you have two screens?
I should be up right now. I think everyone can see this.
Okay. Right now, I'm not seeing the stream, so I don't know what everybody sees. I do you see where it says documents solving your readers' problems?
Yes, I do. It is a little bit
Oh
blurry
yeah, I'll,
here.
I'll
Would you be
make
able
it
to,
big.
yeah, zoom in a little bit? Everyone in the crowd right now, can you guys see the document screen? Just type in yes or something. We got Michael in the crowd, Manny, Dave. Is anybody out there able to see this? Just want to make sure. I can see it on my end, so I'm assuming you guys can.
Yeah, I'm zoomed into the max.
Okay, perfect. All right, cool. Looks like everyone can see it, so let's rock and roll.
Cool. Okay, so I want to start off by saying, of course, that the most important part of this is knowing your topic really well. If you don't know your topic really well, then when you start to write this book, and that doesn't mean, sorry, take this back a little bit. It doesn't mean you have to be like an expert on it right now. You can take the time to do the research too. But if you don't know your topic really well, then you won't know when Jarvis gives you something that's maybe next. I like to say next to true. It's partially true, but it might be exaggerated or the statistics are wrong or something like that. So you just got to be good with your topic. Um, and then I'd say in terms of creating really long form content, you want to have the capability of kind of just sort of outlining your outlines. What I like to say, so almost like outline inception,
Mhm.
where you really kind of maybe your first outline is your chapters, and as you kind of go into it, you kind of have your second level outlines that become your subheadings, and you can even keep going deeper and deeper, so that this will give you the ability to upfront craft your narrative thread so that you know that when the message you want to get across from the beginning of your book to the end of your book is laid out pretty well. So when you do get to the point where you start diving in to do the writing, which I haven't done quite yet, you can see I only got 2,800 words. I only had a couple of
Mhm.
hours to kind of craft this up real quick last night. So, um, and I think it would be just good to kind of use this as sort of the meta for this outline here.
Let's
But
do it.
I might need to sort of zoom out here just a little if I can, because it's hard to see the sort of the structure, but it goes from chapter to chapter. A little bit originally, I was following your outline,
Mhm.
but one of the things that I like, this is not my first book. I've written probably three books, and one of the things I like to do is just to kind of make sure that my outline does stay fluid too. As you're writing, there's no reason to be locked into your outline, with no way to get out of it. And so, as you're kind of going through this thing, your outline can change as Jarvis gives you new ideas and stuff like that. So, and of
Mhm.
course, you can keep adding to your outline as you go, and again, based off of things as you're coming up with them. So let's see. So a lot of the actual content creation comes from obviously two things in Jarvis: commands and the dance, I like to call it.
Hmm.
The dance is where you kind of provide a lead. So let me see if I can get down to where there needs to be new content and start from there. Okay, so in this part of the book, I need to
Okay.
start writing about the failures that my persona might have. My persona is a carpenter named Frank. Let's just say that the topic of my blog would be carpentry, and I need to really lay out a really in-depth story about who my target reader is. That's
Hmm.
what this book is going through. And I want Jarvis to help me write that persona. I do have a video out about this, but this book is showing how you might go even deeper, the different things that you might ask Jarvis. So exploring failures. One of the things I'm taking advantage of is the new feature that Jarvis just came out with over here, where if you turn this on, which I believe this is on, right? Yep. Okay.
Hmm.
When it's a darker gray, it's on. That now, if this is on, the commands that you run, they can actually see what's in the content brief. So that becomes important when you get really, really deep down into your content, and you need a way to sort of section off your content to be able to work on it separate from the rest of the content above it. Because as you know, when you're in Jarvis and you do commands or compose, it'll see back 2,000, 3,000 something characters, and sometimes that can cause a little bit, not necessarily a conflict, but when you're in that particular section and you can't quite break out of all the context above it, and it's just giving you content that doesn't quite fit the section you want,
Hmm.
you can actually use this feature and the triple asterisk to cut off the context. So
Right.
now when I'm here at this point, just this content brief is used both for the compose and now also in the command. So haven't really, honestly, this would be one of the first times I'm testing it on the desktop Safari here. I was using it on iPad earlier, with a few things that I need to report to the Jarvis team. But so at this point, I want to start talking about the failures of Frank. If I didn't do this, I would have all these different interests that he's already got in his life, like fishing and riding his Harley and stuff like that, right?
And
That
so
would get in the
you're
way.
putting the asterisk right there to basically put the blinders on Jarvis from reading above there, and you're kind of redirecting it back to the content brief.
Exactly. So this prevents everything above it, and this content brief is my. I need to go up here just a little bit more. Sorry for this fast scrolling. It's probably so. Starting with a seed is where I sort of start my story for Frank. Meet Frank.
Mhm.
All of this is written by me. This is me seeding Jarvis to give him something to work with for this persona, and he's going to use this to craft everything else for me. So this has gone over here in the content description so that I can use it at any point down here deeper into my content here. So when I come here, this is just a plain language area, right? So you just sort of say what failures has Frank experienced in his life, right? Just a plain question. And again, it's AI. It sometimes likes to embarrass you on camera, so we'll see what happens here.
Is there any chance you could scroll in just slightly here,
Sure, sure.
just a little bit more clear
Yep.
for out there?
Sorry. Yeah, I
Perfect.
forgot I zoomed out. Yep.
All
Okay.
good.
Right. So, did you see the command?
Yeah, so I know there's a few different commands that we have access to right now that take the prompts. There's what command or control enter.
Mm-hmm.
What are the ones that you're using right now for this particular context?
Right. So I just ran a command. So that would be command enter at the end of the line to run that. And that's different. What I'll say is when I say command, that means that I'm doing that. Like I'm going to the end of the line and hitting command enter. If I say compose, that means command J.
Okay.
And the command I ran was just me asking Jarvis, I said, what failures has Frank had in his life? And this is what it started with. Frank has had a few failures. He's been offered to work for a company with better pay, but he always feels like he would be a traitor if he left. Right. You didn't see this, but Frank is a carpenter. He works for somebody else right now, but he has dreams of starting his own business so that he can teach his kids or something someday. Um, so at this point, you could start. You could try and run another command, or you could just do a lead, or you could say something like, and this is the part that kind of takes time too, right? You're not just letting Jarvis just generate your content for you. You're working with Jarvis as an assistant, and
Yep.
I would say something like, his dreams of starting a business would be, and then compose. We'll let Jarvis finish this off for us. Okay, teenage. Nope, it's not what we want, but that's okay. That's going to happen from time to time, especially if you leave it on medium. I like to keep it on shorter so that it doesn't
Mhm.
take off. Also, I'm not talking about fishing anymore, and we're going to be talking about failures. So
See,
update this stuff over here.
Manny is saying, I never thought of using Jarvis to write the customer avatar. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
brilliant. One of the big questions we've seen in the last few months is like, how can you use Jarvis to write like fiction stories or like actual storylines around this? It really comes down to that character development and understanding. At the end of the day, if you're going to write any book, you need to be, you need to know the person you're writing about inside and out. So I really love the way that you set this up here, and it's
Mm-hmm.
setting the stage for the rest of your book for Jarvis to really be that powerhouse assistant that you need. But it's taking time, right? This isn't just throwing stuff against the wall and praying that Jarvis just comes out with the perfect avatar, right? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
clearly like a well thought out,
Right.
intentional behind this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, you want it to apply to whatever your topic is. So
Yeah.
if in this case, I just made stuff up. I don't know anything about carpentry, but if I were to start a blog about carpentry, you know, who is that perfect reader that I need to target? And the more that you know about them, the easier it is to fill out your blog with content, and not just content that's just content to be content. It's content that literally connects with that reader.
We got a
Um,
quick question here
sure.
on is there a difference between the customer avatar and a persona? From one of our YouTube watchers right now. Are
Hmm.
you seeing those the same right now, or is it just same thing, different words, or
Yeah, I think so. Same
yeah?
thing, different words. Although I like to say persona story more than just persona, because a lot of times writers will stop after like that first seed, like after what you see in this content description.
Mm-hmm.
He's been working for the same company for 18 years, but yearns to start his own someday. This right here might be where somebody stops. This is helpful, but it's not deep. Like you don't know Frank, you just kind of know of him a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you get done with what you'll learn in this book, you'll have a monster story about Frank or whoever your person is. I would recommend picking a gender based off of what your target audience is, of course. A really kind of high level, sort of ninja master trick would be if you wanted to look into things like Facebook audience insights or
Mm-hmm.
something like that and just kind of look and see who the majority of your audience is. Are they, you know, women from 32 to 44 or something like that? Are they single? Do they have kids? That kind of stuff might help inform you more specifically towards who your avatar is or
Mm-hmm.
persona. But ultimately, this story, see, this is chapter 3 of the book where I just go through how to build this monster story. Chapter 4 will be the one that blows their mind when they figure out all the different things that they can use that story for. So, um, Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much you want to watch me. I mean, I'll basically tell you exactly the same thing over and over and over and over as we go through this outline, right? It'll be,
Mhm.
tell me the wins that Frank has celebrated in his life, for example, or get down in here into the family history. You might ask Jarvis, um, does Frank have, are Frank's parents still alive? I mean, you can get down to all kinds of details. This is essentially a non, what is it, a fiction story based somewhat in reality for who your target person is, right?
Mhm.
So the outputs being AI generated is actually kind of nice because it kind of frees you from having to be like so ultra creative that you come up with a really interesting story. Jarvis
Mhm.
can help you with that.
Yeah, it's like the stories are, really what capture people's imagination and sell them on like continuing to read your book, right? And that's why, when we're working with people on writing their book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, it all starts with, one, the why are you doing this in the first place? But secondly, it's like really having that deep level of understanding with the customer avatar. So like we got some, comments here. People are really enjoying this. Absolute gold, way cool. This is great stuff because using I think one of the roadblocks that I specifically run into just for me, so I know other people run into it too, is like how do you create a story around this persona that's actually entertaining to read, and then how can you pull little nuggets from that story and sprinkle those around your book so that chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all have different elements of that story that you're crafting here, and but then you can take different pieces of those and apply them to the lessons that you're telling in each chapter. And you kind of alluded to that for
Hmm.
what you're talking about in chapter 4. Is there how do you plan on using this story that you're building right here for the rest of your book, just for you specifically? I'm curious.
Right. Okay. Yeah. The actually the difficulty for me in this book in particular is that I'm writing a persona as an example throughout the book, so it's kind of automatically in the book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, my my own target persona being somebody who is a writer trying to write books, having writer's block or creativity issues, is a separate persona that you can't see here. And I will have one of the things that I believe in. I think you have it in your outline too. Is when you get down to the very very end, offer some bonuses and appendices and stuff like that. Right down here, I'm going to have a copy of the full persona. Right, the full persona story written in this book, and I'm also going to include the one that I used to write the book, which is two separate personas. If you're
Mm-hmm.
following with me.
Yep.
Um, but you mentioned something about like one of the big differences between a book and just an article is that a book is an organized collection of that knowledge, right? And as you're going through it, you're going to have pieces of content that are important for somebody to be tipped off to early in the book, so that they know that later on there's something that makes a connection for them. Or um, I, I took a few courses in cognitive science. Repetition and reiteration of ideas is important as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not to the point where it's like every other paragraph, but something like if maybe in chapter 1 you reference something that's in chapter 3, make sure that you do it and that you kind of make those connections and kind of reiterate the strongest points that you need to get across to your reader. So, in
Mm-hmm.
other words, you should reference things that happened in the past of your book, and you should reference things that will happen in the future of your book, and kind of bring that reader along
Yeah.
for
So
that ride.
David commented on this, creating open loops so people continue reading,
Hmm.
right? And if you don't close those open loops, then the human mind gets incredibly upset.
Yeah, they
Because now
won't
they
be
have
satisfied.
exactly, yeah.
Hmm.
So that's your responsibility as the author to make sure that those open loops are closed,
Right.
but also to sprinkle them in so that people keep reading and are engaged throughout your story.
Hmm. Yeah. there's a reason they talk about weaving the story, right? It's kind of
Mhm.
what it is. And of course, you don't want to like just arbitrarily add weaving to your story just because, but kind of pick the key points that you really want your reader to follow, and give them little nuggets throughout the story, but make sure you do close them off at the end at least somewhere, for sure. Yeah. Um, I mean, I think as far as Jarvis goes, the responsibility piece that you said, like you're the writer, right? This is your book. You're kind of at the helm. Jarvis is that little assistant sitting next to you who takes your commands, and your ideas, and helps you write more or come up with more creative things. So make sure you use Jarvis in that way, as like a cooperative tool or collaboration, not a generator of content, and just ask in plain language the things you want. Ask about what are Frank's wins in his family history, or what's his education and relationships. And at some point, you're going to have a really really nice persona story for your target reader. And then when it comes time to, if you've done this for your book, what'll happen is you'll get to those points in your writing where it's not quite writer's block. It's kind of like, where do I want to take this next? You could let Jarvis, give you an idea, but also if you have that persona story in mind, or even like print it out somewhere where it's just sitting next to your keyboard or something, and you're kind of following along and refreshing your memory of the story of your reader, you'll be able to push through those moments when you're having some creative difficulty.
Absolutely. And it keeps the thing that keeps coming up to me is when you're saying that, right? Like Jarvis is that assistant, right? It's that writing assistant that can help you with the content. You're not going to outsource content to just anybody, regardless, and expect just absurdly amazing results without the proper direction from you as like the business owner, the person that's directing the content in the first place. And that goes for human content too. Like unless you're paying someone like really good money to do all the heavy lifting and thinking for you, like that still comes kind of at the front end. And so, you know, this is, I think this is an incredible exercise that I'd love to kind of start incorporating more on my end for how do you build that customer out and have them for that level of reference throughout the book. Because one of the things I found when you get into the weeds of writing a book in anyway, and you're kind of in your own head and you're writing things out, it can be easy to kind of like trail off if you're not really clear on who you're talking to at the start. And I've heard people use tricks where they literally print out a picture of someone that is their customer persona and have it taped against the wall so that they can literally look and reference and say, okay, this is what I would say to that person in particular
Mm-hmm.
here. You mentioned printing out maybe things that are writing here with Jarvis so that you can easily reference them. But, all in all, this sounds like an exercise that you would do this before you even got to writing chapter one of your book. And it's kind of meta because your book is about this in general. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also teaching this process so that people can apply it to their own situations. So really
Right.
fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. It's all up front. I'm actually creating this book from the perspective of somebody who's maybe starting a blog, but starting a blog is really close to the same as writing a book, in the sense that it's a collection of content that's around an idea. Um, Although a blog might take on multiple ideas and things down the road, uh, the idea is that when you have a really really strong story to start out with, you're going to be able to pick things out to write about. Let me just go up here to a part of this where it says, okay, so we know that Frank is a carpenter with 18 years of experience, but this section here is his interests, and it goes through things like enjoys fishing. Right? I did not write that myself. That was Jarvis helping me. He said, well, he loves fishing. I'm like, okay. I just ran with it, and just said, okay, he likes fishing. If I were blogging about a carpenter who lives in some some area that's got lakes or rivers nearby, and you can write specifically to that, for them. That person, when they stumble upon your blog, they're gonna feel like you're writing to them. They're gonna be like, "Wow, how does this person know me so well?" And once you catch that person, they're gonna, you know, it's eventually going to move to more, and that person might tell somebody, like, "You got to check out this page. It's giving me everything I needed." And also in terms of blogs, of course, I think that the persona is more important right up front than even keyword research and stuff like that. That's all something secondary. But I mean, in the context of a book, you're exactly right. I like to call it the narrative thread. If you have this story ready, the narrative thread comes easy. If you don't, your narrative thread can kind of trail off, like you said, and that becomes a struggle. I was just wondering if are there any questions that have come up about this, or
Yeah, anyone out there have any questions or thoughts or comments, please share them in the thread. See if we can kind of address them right now, or if you're watching the recording, same thing. We're constantly working to create um, better content, up to date content about how to use AI, you know, for just helping you guys along and whatever you guys are doing. So feel free to ask them in the comments, and we'll get to them either now or sometime down the road. But it's a quote that I think, I don't remember if it was actually an Abraham Lincoln quote or something like that. You know how much gets misattributed on the internet. But it was like, if I'm going to chop down a tree, I'd spend like 4 hours sharpening my axe and like an hour or two actually chopping down the tree versus trying to chop it with a dull axe, which ended up taking you more time. It all circles back down to how prepared are you to dive into a project like this. And when we're talking about books, one of the things that holds people back more often than not is that it's a daunting task, and there's a lot of things that go into it, and it's easy to just get overwhelmed by the process and not get started at all. And I think a lot of that gets taken away when you know that you can work with a writing assistant like Jarvis, follow this type of framework for getting the outline, the character, the narrative thread kind of built out, and just know what the beginning and the end, starting with the end in mind, and just knowing that you're gonna have help along the way. Now that we have this type of technology that's giving us an incredible resource that is really helping people get through that writer's block, but also just giving creativity and like different perspectives that you might never have seen before, like Jarvis bringing up fishing. Like, oh, that's a personal hobby that I never would have thought to put in there, but that could really resonate with someone like Frank, who isn't a fishing. You might never thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I like to say that you need to be of service, right? So if you don't know really specifically who your reader is, like, being of service to them kind of falls short a little bit sometimes. Like, I get that, like when I first started writing some books, you're excited, you get started, you might have an intro going, a tentative title, and then you start getting into chapter one, and then you have that moment of fear where you're like, "Oh my God, I don't think I know enough to fill out a whole book on this," or "My book is going to be way too short." And then once all that fear or that doubt starts, coming in, then it starts to like take people over. That's when books start to fail, or just kind of work on it when I get time, and then it's not fresh in memory anymore. That kind of stuff will come up, and yeah, I think going through an exercise like this can really help make sure that you don't fall victim to that kind of problem.
We got a question from Jason here. Is the list of chapters and subjects you're using here available to share?
Chapters and subjects.
Are you thinking he means more like along like the prompts and stuff that you're using here, all the different questions? If you scroll up, if you
well, the questions aren't actually listed in here. A little bit,
okay.
like Jarvis, what interests might Frank have in his life. I do plan to have them in the book, but as far as I am. It's funny. It's funny he asks because I am keeping a separate document of just the commands and the outlines and stuff that I'm creating.
Mhm.
So those might become available at some point if I when I finish all this up. Like I said, this is all fluid for me, so it's not like the outline and these questions are going to be set in stone. These things, they're not necessarily things that you'll need to ask for your needs. You know, as you go through them, the questions kind of come up. You know, as you go. It's kind of like, just think as if almost like you're having an interview with in this case Frank, and you need to try to glean as much information from him based on the story that you start with.
Mhm.
Just ask questions. I would say it would be almost better to experiment and maybe use a couple of these as an idea, but don't get too bogged down in like these are the ones that I have to ask. You'll get more out of it the more you experiment. And I know it feels kind of like, well, I want to have something that urges me first, but if you get into the experimental mindset, when you try things, and I mean the results are going to be the results. You're not losing anything anyways. So just give it a shot, see what comes out, and you'll be surprised sometimes. And sometimes you'll be like, okay, that one didn't work. Reword the question and get something different.
Totally. I think a little more context here from Jason saying he's talking about the template being used here as the guides to fill in the blanks for each chapter.
Ah, well,
He's,
that's the content of the book technically. So it will become available at some point. Yes.
I
As
do
far as
have
these go,
I have an outline for like a nonfiction book that I can share with people as well if maybe that would be of help.
hmm
It kind of follows the same. Let me pull it up here. Uh, Let me see.
did you
Um,
did you switch over to your desktop?
Now I'm gonna share a link in the comments.
Gotcha.
You guys can make a copy of this Google Doc, and I will try and remember to post this on YouTube as well. Seeing the bullet points. Yeah, so that should be in the comments on Facebook and YouTube for the problem solving outline. Um, it's cool.
Cool.
I think also for some prompts, like there's no shortage of customer avatar exercises or worksheets that you can just do an easy Google search out there,
hmm
and just find some prompts for like, what is my avatar's name? Where do they live? How old are they? What kind of books do they read? Magazines? What kind of online events do they attend? What gurus do they listen to? What objections do they typically have? What, like just going through like processes of those and then kind of like thinking in the context of like, who am I speaking to? And then, as Chad was saying, playing around with Jarvis, asking him questions, kind of being fluid with it and developing that avatar and that story along the way.
hmm
Um, I don't think there's one set in stone way to do any of this.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no way.
you know, Not in all, but if you guys are using Jarvis right now, if you do need to have the long form to access this tool, I believe, and then boss mode is a feature that can get activated in long form.
Yep. Yep. So the key thing to remember is that this content brief, it can change, and it's your best friend as far as when you're deep down into the content and you need to get a specific question answered. Turn this on, block off the context above it, and then it only works with this. And don't forget that the more kind of topic rich, keyword rich that the description is, it doesn't have to be necessarily long. It just has to have all those words in it that it can use that Jarvis can use to kind of put two and two together in certain scenarios. And that's something that will come with practice, because if you just write a sort of general story, I mean, this one isn't even all that great, and I'm getting a pretty good amount of content from it. But yeah, this thing here with that thing turned on and then you cutting off the context is key for answering those questions when you're deep down into the content. Because if you think about it for a second, the context. I mean, sorry, fast scrolling again. Hopefully, I don't make anybody motion sick. Um, when you're at this point here, and this is not here, you've got all kinds of content up here that's talking about, him riding a Harley, fishing, different things. It has, none of this content in this side over here is in this. That can be
Mhm.
good, or it could get in your way. And so, if it's in your way, just know that you can cut that off and just use over here when you turn this on. And previously that was not possible because commands would not use the content brief. So that's a new thing
Gotcha.
that Dave and the team added.
hmm Real quick on this, where you're stopped right here. Were these explore their failures, celebrate wins, peer their family history? Were these things that you kind of are coming up with as you're building this outline out, or was this built from a template you've used previously?
Oh no, come with them on the fly.
Okay,
I
cool.
mean,
I
it
think
started off with just the keyword, right? Failures, wins, family history, education, relationships. Then I just added some more to kind of make them more interesting subheadings.
okay, cool. Yeah, so I think that at some point maybe that might become available, but it sounds like it's still a work in progress. So if anyone's going through this, and these are good prompts
Hmm.
to follow back through. But um,
Right, but you have to start
yeah,
with the seed. You start
yep,
with the seed first because if you don't have anything for Jarvis to work with, you go up here just a little bit more.
perfect.
Where I say start with a seed. That's basically this, and all of this was 100% written by me. There's no Jarvis in this at all. And
Mhm.
basically, you start here so that you know that the story is something that's going to flow from what your topic is about.
It's good stuff. We had a good point here too from David saying this all this content can be used for, social sales pages, you
Hmm.
know, like that. That's kind of like,
Branding, all kinds of stuff. Yep.
yeah, and I mean, like, that's kind of where, like, if you look at the book being like the one of like the more ultimate pieces of content that you could make, from a marketing perspective, is it could be all the stuff that you're doing and all the work that you're putting in that, context. Like, sure, it could be like a big blog that you're building out, but if it's a book, then, this is all stuff that could be repurposed for any medium that you're going on, right? Social media,
Hmm.
sales pages, answering, questions, responding to reviews, finding new customers and where your customers are hanging out. Like, how can you do the work and really do the work once, and then leverage that work and the time that you put in as an asset to, save you countless hours down the road, instead of having to come back and rethink about it when you're not in the zone. Um, put the time in up front, and it'll pay itself off if you actually do the work.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, funny enough, exactly what you said is what has happened to me. The AI Content Dojo started as a book. Yeah. Like I didn't really like the website that I purchased was more or less just going to be a landing page where people could buy the book.
Mm-hmm.
But the majority of the starting content that became the website was just me after. I think what happened was I was kind of pre-selling the book in some Facebook group somewhere, and shortly it didn't have an affiliate program at first, but they kind of started one just for me, and I was like, if I get 100 sales, I'll make this into a website and make it free for everyone, or something like that. And like in 2 seconds, I got 100 sales, so I basically made it free for everyone. And essentially went with affiliates. But all that content that was organized for a book just kind of flowed out into the AI Content Dojo website, where I just kind of, and for all intents and purposes, I basically just made the different categories based off of what kind of were the different chapters of the book, and just laid it all out from that book. And now this is what is this? July? Sorry. This is about 4 months later.
Mm-hmm.
The website's hitting 100,000 views a month now. It's you know, the my Facebook group has got over 1,000 members. The YouTube channel's got getting 1,700 or something now. It's growing fast, and it all just sort of started from a book, a book that I didn't even get a chance to finish because I was pre-selling it.
Well, that's a good, maybe for anyone out there that's on the fence about starting your book, like, just do it, right? Like, you don't know what the journey of starting to even like write a book in the first place will take you, and the doors that it will open, right? If the book that you're working on and you're writing and you're actually sharing with people and being public about opens one door, it can change your life, right? And you don't have to sell a million copies. You don't have to be a New York Times bestseller. You know, if one person reads your book and it changes their life, then, you know, I think you've done a good job with what you were trying to do accomplish. And maybe not in everyone's case, right? But, you know, clearly because you put yourself out there, Chad, and you added this value to people that clearly wanted something like this, you know, it's paying itself off. Not in, you know, I'm sure like the book will come, right, as it does, but you know, it's opening up opportunity, and it's giving people a lot of inspiration where they wouldn't have had it before, and it's helping them make more impact. So really great.
Absolutely.
We got a question for you from Dean Davis. Chad, what's the hardest part of writing with AI?
The hardest part. Wow. I don't think I've ever answered this question before. Is there anything hard about it? Um, I guess if you're diving into a very highly technical type of topic, and the output is frequently giving you things that you have to fact check often, it might actually kind of slow you down if you're, again, it comes back to you really, really knowing the topic. Because I guess here's another tip. If you're writing about a really highly technical topic and it's giving you information that you just consistently finding yourself having to fact check, and you're actually finding it's wrong and you got to go back and fix it a lot, start with a sort of a, I guess, a seed at the top of the article. Just kind of write in all the facts that you want to have in your story. Just say, you know, that this is this is that, and that you know, make that connection for Jarvis. Once Jarvis has that connection, all that information is kind of at the top. It might not be a part of your article going forward, but it'll be there for Jarvis to kind of hinge off of, so that when he does start, you know, saying these facts and things like that, that they are probably based off of what you wrote at the top. And then at that point, you know, when you're more done with your article, you can remove the stuff at the top that you don't need. I'd say that's probably one of the most difficult things, though.
Yeah, no, that's a nice fact hack, as David would say, with that. And I know that's something that, you know, people will run across, as Jarvis will say stuff that's just, you know, absurd, or that might be true. I'm not sure. And so, you know, it kind of boils back down to, you know, being the expert, doing the research, knowing your topic, so that you can be like that fact checker for Jarvis. And obviously, the more you know your subject, the faster you'll be able to do this. But that's a really great point for saving some time out the gate and giving Jarvis some more context right there.
Yeah, there's another part to it. You have to pay attention to. There's times where in one paragraph Jarvis will say something, and then in the next paragraph he'll contradict it. So you got to be careful with that. Or two paragraphs down he'll kind of repeat exactly what he kind of said previously. So it doesn't make for a good article. You know, I've seen posts where somebody would say like, "Hey, I started a blog post, I hit compose 12 times, and now look what I got." And you know, it's not really that great. It's amazing that it can happen. You know, I'm not you know, I'm not dissing that, but what I mean is, if you don't take the time to read it and actually kind of, okay, this is not content that I would want to give to somebody as is. That's why being involved in the content, knowing the topic, is so important. You know, you're the writer. It's still you at the end of the day that's publishing this thing, whether it's a book or an article or something else.
Right. Yeah. And I think like when we're looking at AI now and like the ability to produce this content at a lot larger of a scale, it's like, it doesn't mean you should necessarily publish everything that you write. And, you know, often than not, let's say you generate 1,000-word blog post in 10 minutes, you know, based off some stuff. And you're like, okay, that's great. Like, if you're not going to read through it, if you're not going to fact check, if you're not going to edit it a little bit yourself too, you know, I think you're not holding yourself to a standard that, you know, you should be holding yourself to if you're looking to really create high quality content. So, you know, getting that meat, like that chunk of the content out there, I think is where Jarvis helps me a lot. It's just like, okay, let's get it out there. Now it's time to trim down the fat. Like it might be 1,000 word rough draft that turns into a 500 word final product because I just trimmed out a bunch of stuff. And that's how, when I was writing my first book, I could never get over just like writing a blog post in the first place. And so I was just like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. I generated like 5,000 words in the first like hour and a half that I started writing it. I was like, oh, this is incredible. Like, I'm going to turn this into a book. And so like ended up with about a 20,000 word book at the end of the day. But that was trimmed down probably from a total of like 30,000 words that I generated on from Jarvis, and then me going back in, adding my voice, editing stuff up, trimming out repeated words. Like there's still like, honestly, you're more of like the chief editor, right? In this case, and really being that director of the show versus needing to spend all the time getting kind of stuck in the weeds of sitting, thinking, staring at a blank screen. Just be smart about it and put out good content that's going to be really valuable to your reader.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Put out good content for Frank. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to say also to just be the boss, right? Like there's a certain point where, like think about it at your work. If you have a day job and you have a boss that just says like, hey, do this thing for me. Doesn't give you any instruction, doesn't give you any, there could be 10 outcomes. Which one is the one that the boss wanted?
Mm-hmm.
But if the boss gives you, solid instructions, you're probably going to, one, get it done faster, and two, get done what the boss wanted done. So same deal with Jarvis. Just give good instructions. Just if you ever find that your instructions are too short, just add some more words.
Mm-hmm.
It's unlimited.
You're right on the money there with another comment here. It said, hey, human assistant, do all this work on day one without training, and I'm not going to check it, but I'll judge you based on the result.
Mm-hmm,
right?
Mm-hmm,
That sounds like it's like a terrible boss, right?
Yeah, an absolutely terrible boss.
Yeah, but no, this has been awesome, Chad. Thank you so much for kind of walking us through this. Definitely opened my eyes to some different ways to use Jarvis, especially on the customer persona side, but how that weaves in. You're saying the narrative story, like really valuable stuff. And I think everyone watching here can agree. Everyone that joined with us live today, kind of at the top of the hour, so going to start signing off here in a second, but drop your comments, say hey. If you got a golden nugget away from this, share what your big takeaway was, and maybe what you're going to be using Jarvis for based on this. But yeah, no, thank you so much, Chad, for taking the time. I know it's late over there where you're at. But yeah, no, this was really great. This is really great.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. All right, everybody. We're going to be signing off here. Go crush it with Jarvis. And Chad, before we do sign off, where can people go and find out more about you, first and foremost, if they want to continue to follow your content and AI Content Dojo?
Yeah, I would say there's really three places. The AIContentDojo.com, where everything kind of goes. Minus if I create just YouTube videos, I don't always create an article behind them. Sometimes I do, but the YouTube channel is also AI Content Dojo, and I hang out in the AI Content Dojo Facebook group, and also on the Jarvis community too. So can ask for stuff in any one of those.
If I could only edit this stuff and actually type it on my end.
No worries, man. No worries.
All right.
I think people can get it. It's
AI
Content Dojo.
There we go. AIContentDojo.com. Go and connect with Chad on his YouTube channel at AIContentDojo.com. And if you're not already a member of Jarvis Underground, just go and find our Facebook group on Facebook. It is Jarvis Underground. It's the secret society of authors powered by AI. We talk about all things related to books, writing, editing, publishing, selling, and promoting your books so that you can amplify your impact, reach more people, get on more stages in front of more audiences, and ultimately leave a legacy. And we use AI to help you along the way. So thanks everyone for showing up, and we'll see you next time.